Welcome to the Bowden Blitz College Football Playoff Edition. I'm Joe Lisi, joined by former National Coach of the Year, Terry Bowden. Coach, college football playoff games just about 8 days away. We'll dive into those in just a couple of minutes. But breaking news came out last night in the Big Ten. Michigan's going to be looking for a new head coach in 2026. Sharon Moore fired unexpectedly. Breaking news out of Ann Arbor. What does this mean for the team moving forward in 2026?
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's the beginning of the end of all the craziness that's gone on with Michigan, the lack of institutional control. Obviously, something went on that they may have been aware of that was gradually building up with Sharon Moore, and they had to cut the ties and fire him. But they've had they've had gotten NCAA violations when they won their championship for improperly evaluating and viewing other teams. Coaches on the staff, Sharon Moore himself was held out of football games. Hopefully they'll say, you know what, this isn't just about Sharon Moore, it's about Michigan. It's about what's going on there, a lack of institutional control. They got time to get another coach. They'll get another coach. It's a great institution, but maybe it's a wake-up call.
We don't know the full report just yet, but, it was brought up by multiple media outlets that the team and the program were aware of this situation, that there was behind-the-scenes movement to reach out to potential head coaches, and that's the biggest question moving forward. We talked about how long Penn State took to get Matt Campbell signed, sealed, and delivered in Happy Valley. If they were working behind the scenes, are some of the notable head coaches like Kalen DeBoer, like Jed Fish, potentially in play for the Michigan Wolverines in 2026?
Yeah, I think there'll be plenty of coaches that are interested in that program. It's a great institution. And a great place for anyone to coach. And so you'll get some of the best coaches in the country. Interesting if Michigan pursues that coach and goes after them. And they have shown, Michigan has shown that they are willing to look into the NFL as well as college football. There will be a lot of programs. They are one of the elite programs in the country. It's not too late. Some of the better coaches are chosen at this point. But when you're Michigan, you open up a whole new set of coaches. That a lot of coaches will be willing to talk to them that would not have been willing to talk to another program.
Now, interim head coach Biff Poggi does have coaching experience, being the former head coach at Charlotte. He's in on an interim basis to coach the Wolverines in their bowl matchup against the Texas Longhorns. But big picture, we've heard about Kalen DeBoer. We've heard about other big-name coaches. We've heard the name John Gruden mentioned, but it's also keeping and retaining talent. There's been news that potentially their star quarterback Bryce Underwood could be on the move to potentially enter the transfer portal. Let's not forget, Underwood was linked to LSU, now with a new head coach, Lane Kiffin. This gives the opportunity for other SEC schools, but more importantly, Big Ten schools, to potentially poach talent out of the Wolverines.
But make no question, Underwood will be one of the most sought-after quarterbacks out there, getting for a feel for if someone else can lure him away. But again, if the right coach comes in and he says the right things, and they have already shown they have a good enough NIL package, that young man doesn't really have to go anywhere if he has confidence in who the new coach is. So I think he can sit and wait. Most other schools will probably have to wait to see what they can do. So it's not too late for Michigan to get a coach and retain their best players. But I promise you at this point, the least thing that's on their mind is winning the next bowl game. That is the least important thing at Michigan right now. It's not a conference playoff game. It's not a conference championship game. It's a bowl game. And it's not going to make a lot of difference who wins this game when it comes to hiring a new coach and keeping your players.
We talked earlier in the week about Penn State's addition of Matt Campbell, a very solid head coach. You had coached against him in the MAC when he was head coach there. He brings just a wide open offense, an offensive ingenuity that potentially Penn State was lacking, blue collar attitude. But I do want to bring up Marcus Freeman because he's on this list to potentially be a slight shot as the new head coach of Michigan. But big picture, We've also heard about Marcus Freeman being linked to potentially the New York Giants, an NFL organization. A lot of NFL scouts and GMs are high on Marcus Freeman. Now that Notre Dame's not playing in the college football playoff, any chance that Marcus Freeman could potentially bolt for the NFL?
No, I think without a doubt, anytime you're at at a position like that, and you've done as good a job as Marcus Freeman has, I think you can always be on people's short list, especially in the NFL. I don't know if there's a better job than he's got at Notre Dame. It is one of the premier jobs, just like Michigan is. And there's only 5 or 6 jobs in the country that you put in that category, as these are the elite jobs in the country. So will a lot of people make him let him know that they possibly would be interested in him? Yes. But would you be willing to go somewhere else if you got that job? The answer is why. Why would you leave? Why would you want to go? I got a feeling the money will not be any better somewhere else than it will be right there. And so, again, Notre Dame, they could lose their coach because he is a very good coach. Michigan, they'll find a coach. So right now, it's that time of the year. I know when I was coaching all those years and all my family were coaching, December is that month in which you're open up for opportunities, and when it's over, it's over. January, jobs are over. December, everybody's looking.
So on Sunday afternoon, after Notre Dame was not selected to make the college football playoff, the team came out with a statement and said that they would not play in a bowl game. That led some other teams as well to opt out of the bowls in December and January. Give me your thoughts about where the bowl landscape is. It's on life support right now. A good friend of yours, Rick Neuheisel, had come out earlier in the week and said that the bowl format potentially could move to earlier in the season in September. If we still have teams opting out of the bowls, it's going to be very difficult for some of these coaches to potentially coach up talent. And how is the local revenue going to sustain for some of these cities and states that thrive on the bowl system?
Yeah, I mean, I had not thought about bowls going early, but there's nothing new about that. Remember the kickoff classic, games being played in Ireland or being played in England. There's always been that opening game a week before the regular season that was a special situation. Could we make bowl games go to that phase, the ones that are not covering playoff games? Because, again, we're talking about bowl games representing the cities that would have been bowl teams that are in the first 12, maybe future 16-team playoff. Those are all sites that would be bowl sites. The other ones could very well go to the beginning of the season. But I do think we need to pay attention. We don't need to be I don't think teams ought to be negating or dropping out of bowls this year when cities have prepared all year for bowls. Bowls have been good to college football. They brought revenue to programs. I don't know that we ought to all just back out right in the end of a season without these bowl games having an idea, because I promise you, those bowls in those cities have been working on this for about a year to get cities ready for these bowl games.
Why do you believe coaches that are maybe right on the cusp of 500 or 5-7 that have been asked to participate in bowls aren't taking the opportunity? I thought that coaches wanted to coach up the young talent to potentially get a jump on next season. Why are coaches opting out?
Don't you think it's got to be the NIL and people in the portal, new staffs coming together? If you're 5-7 in today's game, you're having a bad year. It's not an okay year, or it's not a close year. And so I think you really look at, do I need to hire a coach? Do I need to make sure I go over with all my players and make sure I retain the ones I've got to keep? Do I start recruiting as hard as I can on players that will soon jump into the portal? I think at this stage, with the playoffs and teams wanting to go there, it's not as big of a deal to go to a bowl game.
When we come back, we'll dive into some of the top teams for the upcoming college football playoff. Look at some of the long shots as well, right here on the Bowden Blitz. All right, back on the Bowden Blitz College Football Playoff Edition. Coach Bowden and I are going to start to diving into some of the top teams in the playoff. We'll lead off with the number one overall seed, Indiana. Kurt Cignetti and the Indiana Hoosiers pulled off the upset on Saturday night. They were a 4.5-point underdog to top-ranked Ohio State. The game went right down to the wire. Indiana prevails. Coach, they snap a 32-game losing streak to Ohio State and win it in dynamic fashion. Just a fantastic year for Kurt Cignetti in Indiana in year number 2.
Yeah, it was one of those games where really statistically both teams played about the same. Statistically, the quarterbacks were about the same. But when it came to making big plays, from making plays when it counted, Fernando Mendoza was the one that came out on top, especially with about 2.5 minutes left in the game, 33-yard touchdown pass to win the game. That's kind of been his MO. He's there when he has to be. It's a team that plays so well offensively, defensively, run and pass that you can't give all credit to the quarterback. But if you're the guy in charge of that whole operation, you've got to come through when it counts in big games. And he has shown that's what he can do. That's why right now they are the favorite to win the national championship. And if you're just going to go with the odds, they are an outstanding football team that doesn't show a lot of weaknesses.
And what's interesting about that win on Saturday night is that their leading wide receiver, Omar Cooper, was knocked around and injured early in the first quarter. He was held without a catch in that matchup. To pull out that ball game minus your top weapon, that's a testament to the program and the blue-collar mentality of Indiana. Cignetti has built up this team on the interior. And, Coach, he's done it quickly. In 2 straight years, he has elevated this team to back-to-back college football playoff appearances. We know he got the extension in the offseason, but he has done a fantastic job, not just cultivating and coaching up that talent, but getting in transfer quarterbacks such as Rourke and Fernando Mendoza this year.
You know, I think what people don't realize, he has jumped onto the national scene so quickly. I don't think many football fans realize how much experience he has as a head football coach. Not only is he the son of a head football coach like I am, but he began coaching as a head coach at IUP, Indiana University of Pennsylvania, then at Elon, then at James Madison, and then on to Indiana. And when he got to Indiana, he was an experienced football coach in recruiting and in running a football program. It reminds me of when I got to Auburn. Everybody thought I was a young 36-year-old coach with no experience, but I had been calling plays and running football programs for 10 years, and that's kind of how Kurt is. He has gone on now to show people that he's probably the most veteran quarterback. When we played against Ohio State, I felt like he was probably the more experienced coach in big games, because I don't care if you're at Elon or James Madison or Indiana, Ohio State. A championship game is a championship game, and you got to call the plays. You've got to run the show. So I think it's a huge factor. Kurt Cignetti is a huge factor in this equation. What he's done at Indiana, he's proven he could done at other programs before.
Now, Indiana has a first-round bye. They'll await the winner of the matchup between Alabama and Oklahoma. That's an 8-9 matchup. Alabama's a 1.5-point favorite in Norman on December 19th. We'll see how that game plays out. But, Coach, do you want to get your thoughts if they were to match up against either Alabama or Oklahoma, big picture, the way they have played this year? Do you give Cignetti a shot? I know they're the number 1 seed, have dominated Big Ten opponents, but does their style match up with both of those SEC teams in the college football playoff?
Well, I think they do. Of course, we know they beat Ohio State. Ohio State matched up pretty well against Texas early. I just think when you look at what you've got to do to be a championship team, it's not Indiana, but it's these other teams that show a weakness. They show a lack of to run the football at times, a lack of throwing the football at times, a quarterback that isn't quite at the very best in the league, a defense that's better than the offense and not good on both sides of the ball. I don't care whether you're talking about these other teams in the SEC or Big 12, Indiana is one of those teams that have shown they can win with their run game and their passing game, and their quarterback is a veteran star. Many pick him to be the number 1 quarterback that will be taken in the NFL draft. and they play great defense too. So he's put together in 2 years of recruiting a team that is very, very talented from top to bottom.
We'll see exactly how that plays out in just a couple of weeks. We'll talk about the 5 seed next. Dan Lanning was undefeated in the regular season last year, lost to top-ranked Ohio State. Now Oregon 5th overall in the college football playoff rankings. They do take the draw of the James Madison Dukes. Oregon, a 21.5-point home favorite in Eugene against JMU. That game is December 20th. Talk to me about Dante Moore and how this team has played this year. Their one loss this year came against top-ranked Indiana. They lost that matchup 30-20 at home, but they can run the football as good as anybody in this playoff.
And they have a great defense. Defense against the passing game, maybe the best in the country. Outstanding football team. Oregon's one of those teams that could very well be like Texas Tech to me or Georgia, right there with the top 2 teams in the country for having a chance to go all the way. And so, and you know what? Even if you don't get a bye that first week, I'm not sure that getting a home game against the James Madison or a team that you're really a lot better than doesn't keep you active, doesn't keep you playing, because you can get a little bit off your game if you sit too long. So they look like they have the right kind of opponent at home in the opening round of the playoffs, that they're going to be in good shape. So you like what Oregon's got, you like the way they've played. They've only lost 1 game to the number 1 team in the country, and they've got a quarterback and a running game that'll go with their defense.
Now, Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks, assuming they win at home against James Madison, they'll square off against the 4th overall seed. That's Texas Tech, one of the best rush defenses in all of college football. Matchup-wise, do you give the advantage to Oregon in that matchup potentially in 2 weeks?
Boy, I tell you, that's a tough one to call there, because I just love what Texas Tech has done with their football team. Their quarterback has been outstanding. He's started over 35 games at Texas Tech. They've got veteran players on defense, and they have done a remarkable job with the portal transfer. You know what? That week will be the great week of unbelievable matchups. Texas Tech, Oregon will be one of them right now.
When we come back, we'll talk about both underdogs, Tulane and James Madison, coming up next. All right, back on the Bowden Blitz, Joe Lisi and Coach Bowden previewing the college football playoff. We talked about some of the top seeds in the 12-team playoff. We're going to look at some of the underdogs. They can potentially get it done. We talked about the matchup earlier in the week between Ole Miss and Tulane. John Summerall and this team won their conference championship. They lost to Ole Miss earlier in the year. Now they're catching 17.5 in this matchup. They have lost 14 straight games, coach, to the Ole Miss Rebels. Haven't knocked off Ole Miss since 1988. The last 4 have been decided by an average margin of defeat of 32.6 points per game. Do you give Jake Retzloff and the Tulane Green Wave any chance to potentially strike the upset this year?
I mean, when you said any chance, I think you give them any chance, just not a great chance. I just don't think the Cards, you look at everything going on at Tulane. Now, again, the coach has done a great job. The quarterback's done a great job. They've won their conference. They played very well. They did not give Ole Miss a lot of a game, but played pretty well against Ole Miss, but still lost by a considerable margin. And now you've got the coach with 1 foot out the door. You've got several coaches, I'm sure, with 1 foot out the door, and you've got players wondering what the future is. All that being said, the head coach will coach them. They'll be trying to get ready to play. I do kind of like them in the number. I like them with the point total out there, but I don't think they can hang with Ole Miss, and I don't think they have a chance to win this game. Too many things going on behind the scenes there, and you know, these teams that are the James Madison and Tulane both, They've made the playoff. What an incredible run. Their chances of moving very far within the playoff are not strong. And I can just see coaches and players say, you know what, we've reached our goal, and that's where we got to. I just wonder if that's a factor.
How much of a factor is Lane Kiffin not being on the sideline? We talked about interim head coach Pete Golding and offensive coordinator Charlie Weiss Jr. taking over the reins for this matchup and potentially a national championship run. But how much of a factor is Lane Kiffin not being in the locker room maybe a detriment to the Ole Miss Rebels in this matchup?
I don't think it's nearly as much as James Madison and Tulane. One, this team, they've had a tough SEC battle. They've had a great season, one of the greatest seasons in history at Ole Miss. They've got the offensive play caller back, the defensive coordinator back. Their game day operations ought to be almost virtually the same thing. I could see Ole Miss playing as good as they can play and not being held back. I know there could be some behind the scenes activity going on the telephone, in communications with some of their players, but I do think they have a chance. They don't come into the playoffs saying, okay, we made the playoffs, that's it. They do come in and say, you know what, let's keep this thing running. They've got a good staff working with them, and you got a defensive coordinator that's going to be their head coach, pulling them together. So I don't see it having as much of a factor on Ole Miss. It's the question is going to be, do they have enough talent to beat the team they're playing?
Let's take a look at the James Madison matchup from the side of the Dukes against Oregon. We talked about Oregon earlier in the show. Let's take a look at James Madison. Their head coach, Bob Chesney, was hired by UCLA. James Madison wasted no time hiring former Florida Gators head coach Billy Napier. When you look at the Dukes overall, you've coached against this team in the Sun Belt. What does JMU bring to the table in this potential matchup in Eugene on December 20th?
Well, the thing you got to know about JMU is that even when they went from 1AA to Division I a couple of years ago, they are the most well-funded, one of the most highly paid G5 programs in the country. They were that way when they got in. So when Signetti left to go to Indiana, they dropped for a little bit, but they immediately regrouped under Chesney and got right back on top of the conference. So they don't drop off too much because that program for a long time has been committed financially of supporting one of the top programs in the country. So they are very well suited and ready to go. Don't think they're good enough against the opponents they're playing right now, but they are not going to fall off. They'll have a program that will continue to be successful in the future.
I do want to bring up the fact if one of the underdogs does, in fact, strike the upset, whether it be JMU or Tulane, what does that do to potentially the perception that these teams were not deserving of being in the college football playoff because they have no shot to win a national championship?
Oh, John, I mean, Joe, that'd be exactly what people would hope to see if you're pulling for these G5 teams that are in that Hoosiers type of atmosphere where anybody on a given day can move on through the playoffs, but it is only the first round. But it would be a huge plus for the setup of the operation. Give these teams a chance. Give them a chance to be in there, and they'll prove they're worthy. I think that's exactly what would happen.
We'll see you next week breaking down the college football playoff right here on the Bowden Blitz.